Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Support for Caregiver Awareness, Learning and Empowerment or SCALE program. This is an 8-week webinar series that aims to empower you with practical information and skills by enhancing your self-awareness and focusing on your own needs to improve your mental health and well-being as a caregiver. My name is Cleo Lenemets, and I'll be moderating this webinar today. I am the program lead for mental health and well-being here at the Ontario Caregiver Organization. So I'm pleased today to introduce today's speaker, Michal Goldstein. Michal Goldstein is a registered social worker working at Dynamic Health Clinic in Toronto, where she sees adults for individual couples and group counseling. She is also the founder of Creating Connections, a play-based therapy practice in Toronto, where she works with children suffering from mental health and behavioral challenges. She has over a decade of experience working with caregivers to support them in improving their ability to cope with the challenges inherent in caring for a loved one. Michal has developed numerous workshops and support group programs utilizing knowledge of interpersonal neurobiology and mindfulness techniques to support individuals suffering from physical health, mental health, and parenting challenges. She is passionate about bringing evidence-based practice to the forefront of the clinical social work field. Michal knows both firsthand and from professional experience the challenges that come with caring for a loved one with a physical and mental health illness. She is so grateful for the opportunity to bring more awareness, education, and support to this community. Thank you so much, Michal, for joining us today. I will pass things over to you.
Thank you, Cleo. Hi, everyone. So today, as Cleo said, we're going to talk about finding your caregiving strengths, your strengths in general, and to try to take a look at how this can benefit you within your role as a caregiver. So the SCALE program, we have this live webinar every Tuesday at noon. We have group coaching sessions and one-to-one phone counseling, which at the moment are full. There is some space left in the Monday 12 to 1 group coaching session, but please, in any event, sign up and put yourself on the wait list if you go in and you see there isn't room, because sometimes there are cancellations, and that lets us know in terms of planning for availability for the next run of the SCALE program, hopefully in May. There's also French group coaching sessions and one-to-one phone counseling available. So please reach out to the OCO to schedule that. And I believe at the end, Cleo will provide you with more information about how to do that. So the webinar topics that we've covered until now, these are available by video. And Stacey or Cleo, if you can put that in the link of how to reach those videos of the webinars that we've already covered and through the SCALE program. So week 1, we talked about your caregiving journey, looking at, what are the stages of caregiving and how do we flow through them, and, how it impacts our relationship with our loved one, and ways that we can start working to improve that in terms of our perspective. On week 2, we talked about how caregiving stress affects you. So how the stress that you are in on an ongoing basis, how it impacts our body and in turn our mind. And in week 3 and 4, we looked at some of the emotions that come along with that, sadness and guilt and anxiety and anger that are significantly compounded at times when we are under a lot of stress, and we looked at ways to address those. In week 5, we talked about becoming a mindful caregiver. So we looked at mindfulness practice and how that can benefit you and your perspective as a caregiver, and how those practices, when incorporated into your daily life, can affect the impact of stress on you. Last week, we talked about self-compassion, how to engender self-compassion within yourself, around your caregiving role, around yourself in general, how to change that voice in your head so that we can talk to ourselves differently and look at ourselves differently within our situation, which really has been proven to significantly impact our ability to function within challenging situations. So this week, we want to look at another tool that we can use to sort of become our best self in a challenging situation that you find yourself in as a caregiver, and how to connect to the strengths that you have in order to find your best self in these moments. And lastly, next week, we will talk about self-care, how to incorporate not just acts of self-care, but a mindset of self-care to benefit you as a caregiver. So to talk about strengths, we want to look at, what are personal strengths? The personal strengths are really any inner quality or resource that we have within us that assists us in dealing with the challenges that we have in life. Psychology for so many years has looked at, what's the problem here? What's wrong with us, right? We look and look at an individual and diagnose a problem within them. But the positive psychology movement has really worked to look at, what is good about people, what is strong about individuals, and the whole strength-based approach movement within therapy tries to look at what are the strengths that a person has, despite or incorporated in a diagnosis or without a diagnosis, whatever the case may be. What are the strengths that each individual person has within their circumstance, within their individual self, that can assist them in reaching their goals in life? So what we want to look at when we look at strengths, we want to look at what are the best things about you? What are the things that we want to cultivate to support you in being able to do what you are doing now, but to do it even better and in a more energized way? The piece about what's best in you connects to what we were talking about last week in terms of self-compassion, to look at not just what's best in us, not just look at, what's best in other people, but what's best in us, right? So compassion, we look towards another person and we say, you have good in you, and I want to support that good. And we want to be able to do the same things for ourselves. So this flows very nicely out of our conversation last week on self-compassion. And so a way to work on this concept of compassion and self-compassion is to look at what are the strengths that I have, right, that make me great, and what are the strengths that other people have that make them great. And focusing on strengths, focusing on what's good about us and what's good about others, helps us and them to actually flourish and to lead a more flourishing life. So why is it important to learn about your strengths? So we started talking about the aspect of self-compassion and how it benefits us in that way. It's also been proven, there's a lot of research that's been done with the positive psychology movement around focusing on strengths and what is the benefit to us. And so when I said before, it leads to a more flourishing life, this is something that's been, empirically proven through research, through a lot of research. So, we see that learning about your strengths and cultivating your strengths really shows an impact on improved mood, right? And how you see yourself and your situation, and recognizing your strengths helps you feel better in general, right? When you are acting from a place of strength, you are acting from a place of what energizes you, what makes you feel good about yourself and about others and about your situation, right? It improves your self-esteem because you're noticing what is good about you. And it helps you focus on personal growth, because when you're focusing on the areas of you that are strong and that have strength and that come naturally to you, when you focus on those areas, enhancing those areas rather than, and that's the whole piece of focusing on strengths, rather than looking at what are my weaknesses, what am I not good at, what do I need to improve, we want to look at what are my strengths and how do I cultivate those strengths? How do I build on those strengths to focus on the areas of my life that I am good at and that I'm successful at and that I'm doing well in, and to build those up even greater. So it helps us identifying strength. It helps us to prevent us from taking on situations that are not good for us or that don't come naturally to us. When we have to choose, should I do this or should I do that, right? Within caregiving, when you're caring for your loved one and you're, overwhelmed and stressed and exhausted, when you're aware of, okay, these are the areas of caregiving that I am more successful at. These are the areas that I do better naturally, that I don't need to work as hard on doing well, right? And so those are the areas that we want to say, okay, let me look at that. Let me look at what are the activities that utilize these strengths, and what are the activities that utilize areas that I have a lesser strength, right? And how can I maybe, offshoot, look for support around the areas that I am not as strong, and look to cultivate my strengths and utilize them more within my caregiving role. And we'll talk more about that at length. So, not to say, this isn't to say that we're, not going to have to face situations where we're going to have to interact with our lesser strengths, right? Be in a situation that we are required to use something that we're not as good at, right? A quality that we're not as good at. And we're going to look at all these qualities, so you'll be able to understand this a little bit better. But it doesn't mean that we're not going to have to engage with that quality. It just means that within engaging in that quality, we will be able to recognize that this is an area that we're not as strong in. And A, look at that with self-compassion, like we spoke about last week. But B, look at ways that we can maybe, like I said, not engage in those activities as much. Or B, if we don't have a choice and we don't have an option to engage in those activities, to say to ourselves with understanding that this might be an area of lesser strength, and I want to try to grow on that strength. And that's another really important piece about looking at our strengths, is that we know that we have the ability to work on this. We have the ability to cultivate and further develop our strengths, whether they are our higher strengths or our lesser strengths. We do have the ability to cultivate these. So when we look at what are my unique strengths, we want to look at, what are the things that give me energy? And maybe as I'm talking now, you can kind of write down some activities, maybe, some things you do, some types of interactions, some types of situations that you find give you energy, that you're good at, that you do well, that comes naturally to you. That someone might say to you, oh, your best character strengths are, these are the traits that you're known for, or you've been told you're good at previously. There are things that you might look forward to doing. There are things that even when you're tired, you have the energy for. There are things that when you're faced with a challenge or an adversity, they're the strengths that you bring to the table. They're the strengths that people look towards you, and you look towards yourself to say, you got this area. That area comes naturally and easily to you. This is an area that you handle well, right? Another way, and so this is ways that we can just look within ourselves and ask ourselves these questions, and get a sense of what are the areas that what are the things that I do well? What are the things that come naturally and energize me, right? We can be, same situation, same day, and some days some tasks we engage with energy. We have the energy for it. It could be 1 a.m. and we could still do it with strength, and other things, it could be, 11 o'clock in the morning and we're not doing it with energy, right? So what are those things, and what comes to mind when I say that? Another more formalized option is something called the VIA Strengths Test, and it's a test that you can access online. It's www.viacharacter.org. You can search VIA is VIA Strengths Test, and it will come up. It's a free test that you can do online. And this list of strengths was basically formulated through research that surveyed across cultures, across traditions, and came up with 24 six virtues, 24 qualities within people that are across cultures valued and sought after. And they came up with a list of these qualities, and they researched ways in which it's a short questionnaire, a few minutes questionnaire, ways in which they can test for these strengths. And what it gives you is an understanding in a very clear way of what are my top strengths, what are my middle strengths, and what are my lesser strengths. What are the things that come naturally to me? What are the areas that I sometimes can, pull out of me? And what are the things that are much more challenging for me and that I won't naturally be drawn to? I'm going to go through these qualities, just very briefly to give us a better understanding of what, the different areas of strength are and what these qualities can look like. And maybe if you hear some of that in yourself and say, oh gosh, that's me, like that is, that's what I know I'm good at, write that down for yourself. And that will be really interesting to see if you did do that test, later on online, how well does it match up with what you know about yourself? So the first is the virtue of wisdom. Now, those who score high in wisdom tend to have, cognitive strengths that lead them not only to acquire knowledge, but to use it in creative and useful ways. Now, if you see underneath, there's a number of different qualities: creativity, curiosity, open-mindedness, love of learning, and perspective. So these are the qualities that go under the virtue of wisdom. So there's these 6 virtues, and then there's qualities that go under them. And they more sort of look at a broader level, what aspects of wisdom, are you specifically geared to, is your strength. So somebody can have curiosity, but not perspective. And I'll just go through them briefly. So creativity means, that you're naturally good at thinking of new ways to do things. Curiosity would mean taking an interest in a wide variety of topics. Open-mindedness would mean examining things from all sides and that you think things through. A love of learning means that you naturally master new topics and you, new topics or skills or areas of research. That's something that you're naturally inclined to. And perspective looks at being able to provide, counsel to other people, that you're somebody that people look towards for advice, and, that you have a very clear way of looking at the world and people look towards you for that knowledge. So these are different aspects of wisdom, right? So you can look at curiosity and say, I take an interest in, a number of different topics, but I'm not so good at having perspective and being able to give counsel to other people and be clear on what those topics that I've explored are, right? And I want to just say that there is none of these qualities or virtues have, a higher standing than the other. These are merely virtues of being and qualities that we have that can be within any person. And we all have some combination. Our natural makeup incorporates different aspects of each of these qualities that we're going to talk about. And, none is better than the other, right? So that's really important to know and to think about within your caregiving role, to say, just because I can't do this as well as this person, doesn't mean that I'm lesser than. I just have different strengths. Next, we'll look at the virtue of courage. So people that score high in courage are ones that have emotional strengths that allow them to accomplish goals despite any opposition they face. So they can really come towards a situation and plow through that situation and really accomplish, whether the challenges are internal or external, or the opposition that they're facing is internally or externally, that they can really have courage to push through and overcome that. So some of the core qualities within courage are honesty. So that looks at speaking the truth. So being an authentic person, being authentic and genuine in your beliefs. Another quality under courage is bravery. So that means you're really embracing your challenges. You're embracing the difficulty, you're embracing pain, and you're not shrinking away from it, right? So we can see how honesty and bravery, how they, when we have high levels of those, it will cause us to be more courageous in a situation, right? Another one is persistence. So once you start something, you finish it. So having that quality can support the virtue of courage. And then zest. Zest talks about approaching, that you approach all things in life with a lot of excitement and energy. The next area is humanity. So people who score high in humanity have, a range of interpersonal strength that really look at caring for and befriending others. So we can imagine how strength in the virtue of humanity can really benefit one as a caregiver. But, thinking about some of the other ones that we've already talked about, you can see how those will also help you, right? Having courage can also support you in being able to face an adverse challenge, right? And the knowledge can also support you in other areas of caregiving, in being able to manage, let's say, the healthcare team or all the information that's coming at you, right? So different qualities really, while you might classically say, oh, humanity, now that's, looking at being able to have interpersonal strength, now that's something you really need as a caregiver. There are other qualities that also benefit different caregivers and allow them to engage in their caregiving with more strength because they have those other qualities. So, under humanity, we look at kindness, which means that you have a strength and a desire to do favors and good deeds for others, and natural desire to do that. That of love, which means that you value close relationships with others. That's something that you value, you look towards, you want, you connect to. It energizes you, right? And the last is social intelligence. So that's being aware of other people's motivations and feelings and thoughts, having that natural awareness. Now, again, as we said before, all of these areas are things that we can cultivate within ourselves. Whether they're a higher strength or a lesser strength, we can cultivate them and make them stronger within us. But there are people that naturally fall into one category or another. The next is the virtue of justice. People that have the virtue of justice tend to possess civic strength. So looking at community, looking at the value of community, looking at the importance of being in a healthy community. So qualities that you would see under justice, look at fairness. So treating all people the same, that's something that's a strength of yours and important to you, that you would treat all people equally. You might have a quality of leadership. So you can organize group activities well, and you can make sure they happen. You can be on top of that. You can lead a community, you can lead a situation, you can lead a team, and that's a strength of yours. Another one would be teamwork. So that means that you work well with others. So there can be somebody has a high level of leadership, but doesn't have a high level of teamwork, right? But they both fall under this virtue of justice, right? So it doesn't mean that you will be good at one just because you are good at the other, and just because you have that inherent virtue within yourself. And then we have the virtue of temperance. So people who score high in terms of temperance, they tend to have strength that protect against different situations in life. So they are able to forgive others easily. Forgiveness comes easily to them, and they look at people who wrong them in a manner that doesn't harm them. They might have a quality of modesty. So they don't, need others to notice their accomplishments in order to feel accomplished within them. So their successes and their accomplishments can stand in their own right, and they don't need others to have that appreciation. So now you can imagine a situation where, you're caring for your loved one, and you're not necessarily always getting that positive feedback in terms of what you're doing for them. But somebody who naturally has strength in the quality of modesty might not take that as much to heart, because they're able to appreciate the value of their strengths. Now, you might naturally have that quality, but when pushed very hard, right, the quality of modesty, but when pushed very hard, you might find that quality challenged. And that doesn't mean it's not a strength of yours. It means that it's something that you can now, because it's this quality is really challenged, it means that you can engage in activities that can help strengthen that quality. So we can look at situations that we're feeling really troubled with within our caregiving role, and we can say, which of these qualities is being challenged in this moment? Which area are we really struggling with? And how can we strengthen that quality? How can we be mindful and aware of, first of all, aware of what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, then aware of, wait, these things are my strengths, but this situation that I'm facing, specific situation within my caregiving role, is really challenging that strength. Now, how do I strengthen myself and my inherent abilities to be able to manage that situation a lot in a better way? So another quality within temperance would be prudence. So that would mean avoiding doing things that you might regret. So making good choices. So some people, will look at situations they do and say, oh gosh, I regret, doing this or that happens to them often. Somebody with a strength of prudence will be able to hold the knowledge that they may regret the situation very strongly in their mind whenever they're challenged, and that's inherent strength they have will avoid the situation that they will engage in an activity that they might regret. And again, it doesn't mean that they will never do anything wrong, and it doesn't mean that they will never regret activities, but it means that this is a natural talent or strength that they have, that they are able to do this in a higher level than some other people might be able to do. And the last is self-regulation. So you can see how that's similar to prudence, but self-regulation looks more about just being disciplined and being able to control your appetites, your emotions, your desires, being able to hold them in more control. So you can see how prudence and self-regulation can work together to create a very strong quality, right? But they might not always come in tandem. And lastly, is the virtue of transcendence. So people who are strong in transcendence often are very spiritual. They want to make connections with God or the universe or religions. They have a lot of meaning and purpose. They're driven by meaning and purpose and understanding in life. So some of the specific qualities that might come under that is appreciation of beauty. So being able to notice and appreciate beauty and excellence in everything. So, just being able to notice greatness and notice beauty, and that when you go somewhere, you naturally notice the beautiful things in the room. It also comes under transcendence as the quality of gratitude. So being thankful for good things and taking time to express things. This is often a quality that many people will really work to engender, right? Gratitude is one that's talked about a lot, right? Writing gratitude journals, having your, gratitude, 3 things that you're grateful for at the end of the day, making gratitude lists and so on. So, that's an example of a way that somebody can higher their strength of gratitude, right? Or if they don't have that strength, then, engender it within themselves to become one of their higher strengths, if it's currently one of your lesser strengths. Another one is hope. So that's, you just naturally expect the best in a situation and you work to make that happen. And you really believe that good things are possible. You have a hopeful outlook on the world. Another quality of transcendence is humor. So you enjoy making people smile or laugh, and you enjoy jokes. That's something that's energizes you, like to make people laugh, to make people smile, laughing yourself, right? And then we have religiousness. So that's having, a solid belief about a higher purpose and meaning in life, and actually it being a driving force in your life, right? It's something that really has meaning for you and energizes you when you engage in either religious practices, activities, or just, religious thought. And it doesn't necessarily mean connecting to a specific religion. It means being connected to a higher purpose and a higher meaning in your life. So as you can see from, all of these qualities, they're all wonderful, right? Like, wouldn't we just want all of them? But the thing is that we each have a core set of higher level strengths that are specific to us, right? And that some other people, obviously they're with only 24 qualities, there's only, so many mixes that it can be. Somebody who's a math wizard can figure out how many combinations you can possibly have in that, but it isn't endless. And so there will be other people who, have similar qualities as you and similar strengths as you, and you might connect to those people because of those strengths. But in general, they're all wonderful strengths. There's no one that is better than the other, and they can all be utilized in your caregiving role to be able to manage your situation in a different way. So somebody who has the value of, the quality of humor, that might be what they use, right? When you can recognize that is a strength of mine, for example, you might be able to say, okay, that is a value that I want, that is a quality, that I want to use more in my caregiving role because I see that it's something that energizes me. So that's the value of being able to look at your strengths, know what they are, know yourself, and then be able to bring them to the forefront of your life. So what about your lesser strengths? How do we look at these other qualities that are not as strong within us, that because we don't have them, they might be really challenging us within our situation? How do we look at those? Now, I want you to notice the use of the word lesser strengths as opposed to weaknesses, because what the positive psychology movement really chooses to focus on is the fact that just because we aren't as good at something, it doesn't mean that we are unable to use it. And it doesn't mean that that makes us any lesser of an individual. So it's not a weakness. It's not a weakness that we're unable to, humor, just take the example we were going to, doesn't come naturally or isn't something we enjoy, right? It's not a weakness of ours that we, don't naturally fall into a place of gratitude. We want to look at what are the things that energize us, and we want to just focus our life. So knowing about our lesser strengths tell us, we don't need to live in the world of our lesser strengths. We can look towards our higher quality strengths and focus on strengthening those, and that will help us feel empowered and energized in our life. And it doesn't mean, ignore the things that you need to work on. It means focus on the things that you are good at and become even greater in them, and allow them to allow yourself to grow into who you really are, and not who, other people might want you to be, or society might want you to be, or a circumstance might want you to be. Focus on who you really are and allow yourself to really flourish in that place. It's also, like we spoke about before, knowing your lesser strengths helps us, recognize and possibly delegate those areas, but more importantly, not be so hard on ourselves that we don't have those qualities, right? Because like we said, they're all even, they're all great. And we wish we could have all of them, but we can't possibly be excellent at everything. And so let's look at what we are excellent at and look at the things that are lesser strengths for us and allow ourselves to say to ourselves, this is hard for us, right? This is a challenge. This is something that's difficult for me. So knowing your lesser strengths is important to be able to say that. I know this is harder for me. And I think it empowers you in your caregiving role when something is difficult for you to not feel as guilty or, ashamed or bad at upset at yourself for not rising to the occasion, so to speak, because we are aware that this is a quality that just isn't inherently as strong within me. So how do we use our strengths while we're caregiving? What we want to do is look at, what are ways that I can draw upon and leverage the strengths that I do have in my caregiving role. So I gave the example before about humor, right? And within every quality, there are times that we can sort of look towards the strength that we naturally have and utilize it. So let's say somebody has, they're very strong in appreciation of beauty. So they might say, beauty is something that's important to me. It's something that energizes me. So maybe as part of my caregiving role, I want to incorporate walks with my loved one. If they're, they're not able to walk and they need to be, in a wheelchair. And so, taking them out for a walk in that way, so that you can spend time with your loved one in a way that energizes you, right? So that would be an important piece there. Sorry about that. Background noise. Another area might be, if you find that I have a strength of forgiveness, I am able to forgive easily. So recognize that in yourself when you are able to, and applaud that within yourself when you're able to. And know that it's not actually a weakness, right? It's something that is a strength for you, that you're able to forgive and you want to give in that way to your loved one. And that is a way that you can give, even if your self-regulation might not be your strength, right? So I give to my loved one. So recognizing, where am I actually giving to my loved one? In what areas am I giving? I can give to them, right? I can look at these qualities and say, wow, I give to them in this, and this area, even though these areas are difficult for me. So it helps you to look at, what am I doing well in my interactions with my loved one that not everyone does well at, right? Not everyone is going to do well at forgiveness. That might be something that comes easier to you than it does to somebody else. And other people might be better at their self-regulation, right? And the same situation they might be able to manage while you're finding difficulty. And again, it doesn't mean that somebody who has a strong quality of self-regulation won't ever lose their temper at their loved one, right? It doesn't mean that, but it means they can manage those situations a lot easier and, with more strength, and it comes more naturally to them. And when they do have that, utilize their self-regulation in any area of their life, not just as a caregiver, it energizes them and it makes them able to utilize their strengths better. And I think that's, the biggest takeaway, I think, from looking at our strength is to know that when we engage in our activities of strength, it is energizing for us. And that is so important because it helps us be our best self when we notice our strengths and when we nurture them. And we nurture them by engaging in them. So what are some ways that you can bring out your strength? So the first one is an acronym: see your strengths in yourself and in others. See stands for, the S is for spot, the E is for explain, and the A is for appreciate. So what that looks like is, when you are interacting with another person, or, just internally interacting with yourself, you want to spot the strength that you see in that situation and actually label it, right? Is this, one of the character strengths that we went through that you recognize? Wow, that person really used their knowledge in that situation. They used their curiosity, and they really interacted with me so nicely because they were so curious about my situation. And that made me feel comforted. And I noticed the strength of curiosity in that interaction. It's great to practice it with others, not just for them and your relationship with them, because it does engender a lot of positivity in relationships when you can appreciate other people's strength, but it actually helps you become better at noticing your own strength. So when you're pointing out for somebody else, that demonstrates to me the strength of, curiosity. I really value that. That's really beautiful what you did. That actually helps you notice more when you're using certain qualities as well. So first you want to spot it, then you want to explain it. So you want to describe what you saw and the reason behind why you're attributing it to that. So, wow, you really showed curiosity there. I saw that because of how you were asking me so many questions about my situation, and that I really appreciated that. That made me feel cared for, right? So that last A is appreciate. Tell them what it means to you that they've utilized that value within themselves. And this is such a beautiful way. If any of you have heard about the nurtured heart approach, it's an approach used with, and I work a lot with parents, training them in this approach, in how to interact with, somebody who's being very difficult. So with the nurtured heart approach was originally specifically geared towards children and very challenging behaviors. And it looked at the reality that when we focus on negativity, we grow negativity. And when we focus on strength, we grow strength. And that's what I was saying before in terms of looking at your higher level strength and your lesser strength. When we focus on these strengths, we help them grow and we help the person grow. And there's been research done with this nurtured heart approach, and it's shown that so many children who this is used with, this nurtured heart approach, the behaviors that, really challenging, defiant behaviors, criminal behaviors will melt away at the use of this approach. Because what essentially you're doing in that approach is the C, is you're noticing what is great about this child instead of what is wrong with this child. And we can use that in any area of our life. We can use that in our relationships with our loved one and that we're caring for, and with all our other relationships as well as our relationship with ourselves, to notice, to see, to spot the strength that we're seeing, to explain to them what it is you're seeing, or to yourself, and to show appreciation for that quality. Another activity that you can do is the red and green activity. And I believe that was sent out in a handout to you, or will be sent out in a handout to you, just going through this activity. But just briefly, it allows you to sort of assess your day and look at what are the green activities. So the green activities are the ones that you that rely on your strengths. And because of that, they help you feel energized and active, and a desire to grow and do, and to continue in whatever you're doing. And so the green activities are those activities. And so it looks at the energy that you feel, so the outcome of utilizing strengths, to help you identify what are these strengths that I have, because I'm looking at strength, because I'm looking at energy, I'm noticing, oh, this is a strength of mine. So it sort of moves backwards in that way. So you're going to note for yourself throughout the day, what are some of these green activities? So activities that you genuinely enjoy, that make you feel energized, that make you forget, that time has passed, that you look forward to, and that you can do well even under conditions of stress or, fatigue. And and you want to kind of write those down for yourself. And then on the other hand, you want to look at what are these red activities. So activities that you don't like doing or that make you feel depleted, that time seems to pass very slowly when you're doing them, that you don't look forward to. They require a lot of effort and self-control to do them well. So, those are your red activities. So, at the end of the day, you sort of, or throughout the day, you can sort of look towards your day and say, what were some of my green activities? What were some of my red activities? And that can help you identify things and qualities that you have that are energizing for you, and strength that you have that are energizing for you, and challenges that you have that you're not able to sort of utilize your strengths in. And so you can get a very good measure of sort of, where do I want to focus my attention, and how do I want to look differently at the situations that are very hard for me. And it just identifies what are my strengths and what are my lesser strengths, my higher strengths and my lesser strengths. So this is similar to what's written next, which is to self-monitor your strengths. So it's really, when you do know about your strengths, if you do this via strengths test, to look throughout the day and sort of assess, like, where am I holding in terms of these strengths? Am I utilizing them? How did I utilize them? And the benefit is that you want to engage in as many strength-based activities throughout your day as possible. So if you know that there's, pursuit of knowledge and is something that you really enjoy, you enjoy pursuing that knowledge. So you want to incorporate that in your day as much as possible, right? Or within your week as much as possible. So specifically setting aside the time, let's say next week when we talk more about self-care, you can have these strength qualities in mind and say, okay, if I know that this is something that is a natural strength to me, I want to make sure to incorporate it in my day. I want to monitor my strengths throughout the day and notice, what am I using and what do I want to use more? Because those are the things that are going to give me energy. Another way to do that is by strengths journaling. So, you take either a journal entry, a previous one, or you write a journal entry, and you want to spot your strengths within that. It's a way to help cultivate this ability to notice strengths in yourself and in others. And the last is, using your strength in a new way. So taking that love of learning that we spoke about before. So let's say you are already, using learning, and you're constantly looking, reading books or researching different topics, and you know that that's a strength for you. So now let's look at another way that we can, love learning. Maybe I want to engage with my loved one around some learning that they're doing, because it's something that comes naturally. It's a way that I can connect to them naturally. So lastly, and we touched on this already, is, how do we bring out strengths in others? We do that by noticing, what are we giving energy to? Are we giving energy to, negativity, to things that are not positive, to qualities that are not positive? Or are we giving energy in another person and in ourselves to positive qualities? So when we are spotting strengths, when we are cultivating the skill of strength spotting throughout our day, we look towards others in that way. And we can actually really rise them up to be their best selves, in our caregiving role and in all our relationships. We can rise up others by focusing on their strengths and noticing them and using that C technique of spotting it and naming it and energizing it by giving, by using words to explain what you're seeing, and then showing appreciation for that. And that's a way that we can cultivate in others their strengths. And what that does for us, because in this program, I like to always turn back to you as the caregiver. What that does for us is create a person that we are working with, that we have to work with in our caregiving role, to be a more positive, flourishing person themselves. So it only benefits us as well when they're being their best self. So to notice, where are their strengths, right? When, after you do the test for yourself, you can sort of look at, what are their strengths and how do I focus on their strengths in my interactions with them and the activities that I engage them in, so that they can feel more fulfilled in their life. So, these are just some additional suggested resources that will be sent out as well. Just if you want to, it has the link there to the VIA character strength assessment, and some other resources that you can look at in terms of focusing on strengths and flourishing within the strengths that you have.
Thanks again, Mial.
Thank you. Have a good week.
Bye.